I decided to take the boat to see Doris. I went into the city centre and I bought a ticket for the night sailing. In those days, the boat left from a point opposite the Liverpool bar on the North Wall. It was Da's local, and we always had a drink there before we got on the boat. I used to stand outside the pub and watch the cattle being herded on. In their excitement to get away from the herder's stick, they'd knock each other down in the scramble. I was fascinated when their feet went from under them and they slid around like mountains of jelly trying to get upright again. The squeals of the cattlemen were as bad as the animals. Now the mothers and wives who lined the quay wall were not so deluded. They knew only too well what lay ahead. They wiped their eyes with their hankies because their men weren't coming back. In the ship's bar on the way over, the men drank beer so they'd forget, and they sang songs so they'd remember. It was always a great place to be as a child because the men would force money into your hand, just for luck. It was more civilised now. Stepping onto the boat, you could be forgiven for thinking you were walking into the Gresham Hotel. Men in uniform greeted you, bars plural were everywhere, and restaurants where a hostess brought you to your table were standard. Cattle were present, but only in the form of sirloin steak, served rare, medium, or well done. My first memory of travelling to England was coming to see Manchester United play Shamrock Rovers in the European Cup. Oh, I was very grown up, I was almost 7. And I was making my first pilgrimage to Old Trafford. At home, we supported Drumcondra FC, or Drums as they were known to us. On this occasion I'd come to support Rovers because they were a Dublin team. I didn't know that I'd be reborn that night as a Busby babe. It was all thanks to Da that I became a Manchester United supporter, an allegiance I'd held onto all of my life. I would never forget the power I felt inside the stadium that night, and how helpless I was to resist it. 50,000 people cheering as one, and when I opened my mouth, how I possessed that power too. It was Da who'd bestowed it on me. He hadn't chosen Shay or Ita. He hadn't chosen Johnny or Frankie. He'd chosen me.